Welcome to another edition of Footprints by Operator Radio, broadcasting live in a cultural hub called Warm Rotterdam. Welcome. My name is Frey, and next to me is sitting the producer of the hour, who I'm going to introduce in just 1 second. Before we start, let me first elaborate a bit on what Footprints is. Footprints is an ongoing series where we do a deep dive into music and producing. We talk about workflow, we talk about arrangement, composing, VSTs, effects, so on and so on. There's a live audience right now in Warm Rotterdam, but there are also... Give it up for the audience. Thank you, thank you. But we also have some people watching right now live via the operator website, session 2 or stream 2, if I believe. And if you have any questions, you can ask them via the chat, the audience right here. If you have any questions, you can ask them. We have a different section where you can do your questions for me or for Mayo. So, without further ado, next to me sitting right now is Mayo, a producer and DJ from Amsterdam. She focuses mostly on down-tempo electronics, EBM and techno, but she has a lot of different influences. Yeah, so give it up, give a warm welcome, put your hands together for Mayo.
Thank you. Is it on? Yeah, right? Okay. Good evening, everybody. Happy to have you here. And yeah, my name is Mayo. I'm from Amsterdam. And basically, I'm only interested in making music.
Nice. So, how long have you been making music, Mayo?
I started making music when I was very young. My parents, they put me in music class when I was about 6 years old. Started to do the basic stuff like playing a flute, being annoying, learning to read notes. Then from then on, I could pick an instrument, and it's a little bit of a secret, but not so much. I picked a saxophone, and I played that for 4 to 5 years. Then I started to hit puberty and started to play guitar, but then I didn't want to practice guitar, and my brother played drums, so I went to play drums. And then I got into skateboarding and snowboarding, and I was like, fuck all this shit, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to hang out in the mall and just do basic stuff that kids of that age do. And yeah, when I got a bit older, I started playing in a band. I was about 18 until my 22nd, something like that. And that fell apart, and I didn't know what to do. I was thinking, okay, I have to find someone else to make music with. Could not find anyone, didn't have any friends, and I thought, okay, I should DJ, because you can do that by yourself. So I started DJing, and that was very fun, and I realized there's more to it. And then I found out about Ableton Live. And yeah, from then on, it went a bit in waves, because I like Ableton, but the learning curve is quite tough, or I found it quite tough. So I think the first 5 years, I just played with it here and there, but not too serious. And after a certain moment, it just clicked. And from then on, I got super addicted and started producing like crazy. And I think and for now, doing this stuff, it's 8 years since I started, yeah.
Nice, and you also released your debut EP, right?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
On the label of Carista, United Identities.
Yes.
How was it? How was that development of making some tracks and eventually releasing them even? How was that feeling?
The feeling was very nice, very confusing, because it was unexpected. I've known her for a long, long time, from going out from the city of Amsterdam. And when she found out I was producing, she was like, hey, just send me some tracks. And I was like, yeah, sure. And of course, I was thinking, nah. And I didn't do it for a longer period. Then I run into her again, and she's like, you have to send it to me now. And I was with her in the car, I think somewhere to Future Intel to watch a friend play. I think that was it. It's like, okay, I'll send it to you now. And I sent it, and a couple of days later, she's like, I want this, and this track. Let's make an EP. How you feel about that? And I was like, oh, whoa. I was super surprised. And also happy, for sure. And happy to be working together with her. There was some doubts in the beginning, because I thought, I don't know if this is the sound that would fit the label. But then we had some conversations about it, and I think that's what United Identities is about in the end, of course, and bringing all different, things together. And now I couldn't be more happy.
Nice.
Like I wouldn't do this like the first debut with anybody else. I'm happy that I did that. Yeah, shout
Yeah.
out Carista.
Shout out Carista. You were talking about your sound and for it to fit the label United Identities. What is your sound? Would you elaborate a bit on that?
It's my sound. I would what I always say, like down tempo electronics, because it's really broad, and then I'm just done with that question. But it really, touches the surface with industrial, EBM, electro, techno, a bit, in that direction.
Nice. And what are your influences then? For what type of music did you listen to when you were a kid?
That was a lot. I used to listen to a lot of punk, a lot of metal, but also a lot of hip hop. Also a lot of pop music, like cheesy shit. I can't deny, I love it. I love Katy Perry and all that stuff.
Do you also hear that influence in your tracks, Katy Perry, or is that a little bit too much?
I don't know, I hope so.
Nice. Okay, so what did you bring with us? What did you bring today? For us?
Yeah, it's nice that we're speaking of this first release. I have one track on it. It's called Aura Face, and it's a track that I made, I think quite some time ago. And it's funny to go through it also for me, because I was preparing at home and looking at it, and it was nice to see how how I evolved in producing. And this track, I had a super hard time with it, because most of the time things come super easy, and I don't do a lot of revisions and stuff like that. And this one I had like 7 versions of it, and it was initially meant for a different label too. And it's also a bit faster, so it's like 130 something BPM. And I was producing that for something else, and that person wanted to have it super stripped, just a kick and some elements, and it just didn't work, didn't hit. Also for that label, it didn't work. And then I just started adding like tons of shit, and I feel it's very ADD, which is nice, and it got super messy. But then in the end, it became what it is now, and like something that grew, very minimal to what it is. So we can have a listen to it. Should we? Yeah. Is die uit? Ben je jaloers op je biertje? Nee, deze heb ik dus aan. Oh, staat wel. Dit looks actually a little bit musical. Ja.
Yes, yes, give it up. Give it up for Mayo.
Thanks.
So we talked a bit earlier, and you sent me this track on the phone, and I listened to it on my crappy iPhone. But this is like a totally different vibe hearing it with good speakers. So really dope. I heard a lot of different intricate sounds and arrangement stuff that are gonna ask in just a moment. But yeah, if you could tell me a bit about what it was your inspiration for this track.
Yeah, like I said, a friend of mine that owned the label, they do faster electro stuff, and I, yeah, really wanted to work together with him since it's always nice to work with friends, right? So that's what actually is the idea. Nothing too deep, actually. I just wanted to make, yeah, a bit faster electro tune, which I'm not super good at. So that's how it came to this, actually. Yeah.
It still sounded good, I think. You know. Why the name?
Aura face. It's because of the bass line and the sounds that, like, you know, it's like that phasing effect, kind of. Yeah. Just
Keep it simple. Okay. Yeah, could we do a deep dive into the track? How do you made it?
So the reason actually why I picked this track is because I made this one completely on my computer, and I think that would be nice for everybody that doesn't have access to, you know, some of the gear that I'm also using, because I'm a big fan of modular synthesis, but you know, I also like sometimes to not get distracted by everything that I have in the studio and just work on my computer. But this one is also a couple years ago, which when I didn't have too much things going on. Yeah, maybe it's nice to start off with the drums. And is everybody familiar with Ableton Live and producing things? Little bit, tiny bit. Okay. So what I normally always start off with is finding a nice kick. So I have like the 606 from Live, actually. It's in there. It's stock. I layered it with another one which is has a bit more low end. I'm gonna let you listen to it. So and this is the second one. It's a bit more distorted, actually. So I started with this, and actually it's a bit of a very weird rhythm. I think also this track is a bit hard to mix, if I'm a bit honest. Why I layered it is because just separate, it's just a bit flat, so I just wanted to have more harmonics to make it sound a bit thicker. What I do is I added an EQ, and here you see I boosted it a little bit. I boosted sometimes around like 90 hertz. Here I did it a bit higher because you see there's a dip there, so I wanted to have that. I wanted to have a bit more of the chest punch, so I needed a bit more of that there. A compressor, I use the H-comp of Waves a lot. I think it's in all my productions. It's based on an analog one, and it sounds very good. And I also feel good with just using the presets. Like always, you know, there's engineers that made this stuff, and you can always mess around yourself, but I would suggest just try a preset first, because it always works. This one is called Fat Kick, and I think the kick is quite fat, so it's good. Let's see. I've just a head effect, nothing special. I use the Ableton Live reverb here. I don't use that reverb anymore because I kind of can hear it in people's production when they use this reverb, and it's a very good reverb, but it's just in my mind, it doesn't feel original enough, but that's just me being difficult to myself. And then I layered some heads here too, which is actually, I think this was from a sample. It's a loop, and I think it gives a lot of depth. I did some processing here. This is one of my favorite plugins, Valhalla Supermassive. It's also free download, so really suggest to grab this one. You can go really weird, or you can just add some reverb details with it. And yeah, some more heads here. Here you see which loop I use as well. For some weird reason, I added this reverb. I think when I was actually producing this track, I was also kind of trying to understand what certain plugins do, which works best, which sound best. So I also, when I was preparing for this evening, I was checking everything. And I thought, oh, I made some weird decisions here and there, or why did I edit this or that? And I was just basically trying out and didn't have as much of an understanding of what I was doing as what I have now, kind of. And then here more heads, like this shitloads of heads actually, and this one also a loop. And yeah, process it all the same way. And the most, let me see, oh yeah, I added snare. The snare was kind of thin as well. Yeah, so I layered two, and this one is actually from Lego Weld. If you go to his website, you can download like a bunch of like samples or shit like this, and it's nice. I put these two together to make it sound a bit, a bit thicker. And if you have two snares, and if you pan them left and right, but just a tiny bit, then it has a bit more depth to it. So that already sounds a lot better than just the separate one. Okay, and let me see. Yeah, the most interesting part of this, which you guys can already guess, is the bass. Initially, it was this sound. Very deep. Then I just EQ'd it to make the sub and layered it with, more. This was actually the initial sound. And then I use a trick, what I use a lot actually. I take the track, open a new one like this, and then I just add, I say like, okay, it's the bass coming in. I route it from the first one to the second one, and I record like a whole new thing, and you just transpose it. So when you play this, then you have transpose here, and if you hold shift and you go up and down, you can go up and down an octave. You see, so you can make a lot of crazy effects with it, and that's basically what I did here. And I just did it, I think maybe even 10 times, like another track, and then mangled it in some way.
Quick question before you go on. How did you make the bass? Did you play it in with a pad, or?
I think this is also just a sample that I found somewhere. I don't know where the original is, because it would be so nice to let you guys listen to it and see how it changed. Like you can hear it, like you can't hear a resemblance of the original one anymore. And yeah. So let me see. Okay. So what you do if you are layering, you always take the frequency. So I'm not gonna layer a part where there's a lot of bass. Like here I filtered the bass out, so that the higher parts of that parts shines through, and then here on this part I have the bass going on, or else it gets like super messy and cluttered. You don't want to add like frequencies on frequencies and frequencies. So if you layer, you always want to keep it separated. So if you have 3, you have like one for the mid, one for the low, one for the high, in that sense. So let's see. Are there any questions in between, by the way? That's a very good question. I normally do it. Here I'm not sure, so I'm just gonna check. Yeah, not too much actually. I think the kicks are just very different. So I think here it was possible, but here I cut a bit more of the high frequencies. But yeah, I tend to do that. I always try to do that, but it's not always necessary. Um, you have a bunch of pads going on, and this is actually really nice. This is a Jupiter 8 plugin that I use a lot. What I do when I make tracks like these completely digital on my computer, I run it through a tube compressor and voice mind print. That's what we have in the studio. It's very nice. I think it's only about $150, and then it will always sound a bit more, has this like analog touch to it. So then there's some structures, some ambience that you hear in the background, super low. Some pads. I don't know if you can hear it. Yeah, a little bit. So with these things, I try to quite pan it a lot to give it, a bit more of a vibe. If I keep these away, the track goes super dry. And I can show you the plugin. There's this thing called Roland Cloud. I don't know if you heard of it. It's a big recommendation. You can get all the Roland synths just on your computer. You pay like 20 euros a month. And it sounds super good. I don't hear anything. Yeah. So that's what I use actually on the synths here. And yeah, that's about it actually. It's not that complicated. It's just only a couple of tracks. Some effects here and there.
Nice, thank you for elaborating a bit on that. You talked a bit about how you made the track. Could you also say something about the arrangement? What was for you important about which element do you want to bring forward in the track and which element do you want to bring in later? What was your creative process and your workflow?
With this track I had a hard time because there's a lot of different sounds. The kick changes all the time. So it took me a while to get it right also. I think that was the hardest part of this. I didn't want it to be basic intro with like a 4 to the floor kick or whatsoever. So that's now getting back to when I said it's a bit hard to mix because the kick is just, it starts off a bit weird and it's a different count, but I thought it would be a bit more original. Like. So I always just try to see after like a couple bars, like the first, to add something new. But with this one, I just went super weird. I just went from one thing to another, but in the moments where I thought, oh, it feels good here, and I didn't think of what was logical. So the whole thing sometimes feels a bit messy and unlogical, but in the end, it does all fit together.
You just went with the flow.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. And I saw you use some effects and plugins. Like, what are your go-to? What's your go-to equipment in making this track?
I use the Fab Filter Pro Q EQ because it's very precise, very clear. I think, like I said, all the Ableton stock plugins are actually fairly good, but the EQ is not too good. It's not, in my opinion, not precise enough. And I'm gonna speak more about different EQs in the next track. And I added a saturator, which is also nice to do when you have something very digital. You add some saturation.
What, for the people that maybe don't know, what is a saturator?
it adds harmonics, so it adds some more frequencies to it to make it cut through a bit more, and you can really control it. I can show it here. So you have this kick, and then without, it's very subtle. I just did it a little bit. There's some examples where it's like a big change, but it feels a bit more full, a bit more warmth you get with it. This is off. And this is on. I exaggerated it a little bit now, as you can see, and it was a bit less before, but... And this plugin you can actually put on everything. It's very useful, makes it sound super nice. It's also very, very easy to use, very hands-on. I have a distortion on the second kick. That one is a bit lower in volume. It's from Waves, called Berserk, very easy. So it was a bit much. I took it down a bit, but still wanted to also to add a bit of like saturation, harmonics to it. A bit that, like I say, the same way I used the Saturn from before. And oh, this is actually something I like to do. I'm gonna show it on this one. So if you have heads, what a very nice trick is, sometimes you just gets a bit boring if it hits the same way in the same frequencies. And here I added the EQ8, because sometimes I do use it. And here you see that I boosted it, and I added an LFO to it. So I'm gonna let you know, you just map this one to the frequency. And here you can choose how fast you want it to go. And that gives the heads like a phasing effect. I'm gonna listen to it now. When it's in the upper frequencies, you hear it best. And you hear like you hear the noise a bit more high. So without it's just a bit more boring, but it's just a subtle thing.
And I see you compressed it with, it seems, the kick.
Yeah, I sidechained it a bit.
Sidechain.
Yeah. And sorry. And I did it on more. Let me see. So the same thing with the LFO. It's a Max for Life effect, by the way. It's stock. It's in there. I did this same with like an envelope follower, which is not following anymore. I don't know what happened here. Well, that was a shitty story. This one should be following the EQ there. I think something went wrong with bouncing this back on my computer, because I made it a long time ago. Anyways, I think for this whole project is the same on most of the tracks. Here I used a compressor from Waves, and I think I was just checking different compressors. And like I said, the one that I use now all the time is the H-comp from Waves. So that one sounds very, very good. And this one is a bit more, more basic. I think this one is very comparable to the compressor that's actually already in live itself. And here I did the same thing with the LFO. Let's see if we can hear it a bit. So this example is much better actually. So here I also have the EQ, and then it's connected to the LFO here, mapped, and then it just keeps moving and makes life easier. You don't have to do things manually or use automation,
It's automated.
yeah, exactly, because sometimes I'm a bit lazy with automation. I'm a bit busy all the time, so I don't want to be like super precise on that. So it's nice if the computer can do things for you. So. So on this, like the super crazy like reverb, feedback, delay effect it's coming from Supermassive, and yeah, it has like super weird effects, very outspoken, and this one does a lot makes the whole track kind of, in my opinion, just without. So you're missing all the depth. So this is with the effect on. Autopen I use a lot as well, actually. I love autopen, especially on hi-hats too, actually, to make them move from one way to another. Only thing is with panning that I wasn't aware of when I was making this track, that club sound systems, most of the time they're mono. So if you pan things a lot, they just like lose their volume and you don't hear it anymore. So it's like something nice to keep in mind if you are producing clubs for the track, for the club, that is. And
Before you go any further, are there maybe any questions from the public right now or online? Yep. You're gonna get a mic.
Do you hear me? Oh, yeah. Do you always use effects as inserts, or do you also make use of send and returns?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Here, I was not very aware of that. I have some on the returns, but I was not very good with it. I didn't understand it. I thought it was too complicated, and I didn't mind it too much. But yeah, what you're gonna see in my next project, I use like a bunch of returns for sure. And what I also really like to do now, because I have a certain amount of effects that I like, and I have a template where I start off with, but we're gonna follow up on that a bit later. But here what I did, I don't know. Oh yeah, wait, I do know. I have the reverb and I put an EQ before, which is always a nice thing to do. I don't know, this is maybe a bit too much of cutting what I did on the on the reverb, but when the signal comes in and you don't want any bass frequencies in your reverb, it's just gonna make it clutter and muddy, so that's why I cut it here, and also a bit on the higher frequencies, but the higher part, I think this was a bit unnecessary. It could be like until here or whatever. And yeah, I think we went through most of it for this one, to be honest. Yeah.
Any other questions from the public? Patrick?
Yeah, I have a question too. When did you make the track? Because you were like experimenting a lot, and you mentioned like the panning. I didn't know that in the club the sound is mono. So yeah, I'm just curious, when did you made this track? And
I think it was 4 years ago.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
quite a long
cool.
time, 3.5 or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, it's probably a very bad example what I'm talking about now to you guys.
No, but I do really like the track, especially like the arrangements. That's really well. I think it's really interesting. It's a pretty long track, right? 6-7 minutes, but it keeps you like
Engaged.
I'm interested.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still like constantly like, okay, what's next? And do you remember like how long you worked on it, on the track? Well, it's 4 years ago, but
Yeah, this one quite long. Normally, when I work on a track, it's 1 day, maybe a bit longer, and depends on how much details I want to add afterwards. And this one took some time. I think it could be even up to 4 days. Like when I say a day, I mean like like boring as like working day, like 8 hours, something like
Well,
that.
to
like,
me,
not
4
24 hours.
days is still pretty quick. You know, I mean, like, well, it really depends on on the on the artist, the producers. Some people work like weeks, months on one track, and
I could
that's,
work a bit longer sometimes on things, but I lose my attention quite fast when I'm not interested anymore. I don't feel like it. So I want it to be hands-on. I just do this. I want it to sound good. If it doesn't sound good, I move on to the next. And I do. I'm also not tuning a kick for 2 hours like some people would do. Yeah.
cool. Well, that's it.
Okay.
Okay. Before we go to the next track, because you brought along another track, I have one last question. Do you also mix your own tracks yourself?
Yeah, but that's since very recently. For this release, I had an engineer, very good one, Anton Pieta, who did the mix down for it, and that was very nice in a very nice studio because they have super sick compressors that I don't have access to, and that was very nice too. But I have an upcoming release on Broken Toys, and I did the mix down myself, which I was kind of happy with, and then the mastering engineer just took it to another level, and I think it ended up sounding very good. I enjoyed the whole mixing process a lot, but it's only since the past year that I started to get better at it. It took a while to have a good understanding of how things should sound and frequencies and compression and stuff like that.
Dope. Thank
Yeah.
you. So let's go on ahead to the next track. You also brought some equipment with you. Could you tell a bit about what you brought with you?
Yeah, so what I talked about, what I had in my studio, yeah, it's most of all I have a modular synth that I do almost everything with, but next to that I have the Electron Digitact, which is a drum computer sampler, and the sequencer is really nice, so I use that to sequence my modular. And I run that thing like the drums. I load in my own samples. I don't use the Electron samples because they're not my favorite. And next to that, I have the Erica Synths Fusion Box, which is an overdrive, delay, can do a whole bunch of things. But what I use it mostly for is add the saturation that I do with the compressor, the tube compressor that I have, or with the fab filter Saturn that I just showed. I use this one, and this one has a tube in there as well. And I think it sounds very good. The overdrive is very nice. So I have, for my drums, I combine these two. And yeah, on the next track, I also use the drums on this. So I load in a bunch of samples. And I have my favorite kick that I always use already in there. Yeah.
What is your favorite kick?
It's an 808 kick, but you have this thing called 808 Warfare, which is a bit more like bassy. It's used in hip hop a lot. Very heavy. I'm gonna listen to it a bit later, and then I just add a bit of character with this thing because just an 808 is, in my opinion, a bit blunt. Yeah. Just
The audacity.
No, but I'm always stressing myself out that I'm scared if I use samples that I'm not original enough. So I'm just always trying to find a way to maybe just add a little bit of, I don't know, my ego to it, perhaps. Okay, shall we listen to the next one? Yeah. The next track is, I made it last winter. It's fairly new. It's not very new, and it's gonna be released next month on United Identities on the compilation. And yeah.
Yes, yes, give it up, give it up. So, again, what was your inspiration for this track?
Personal reality.
Did you made it during the COVID time, or it was before? How do you
That
think?
was a little bit of COVID time, I think. I don't know. I'm just not very conceptual. I wish I was very good at answering these questions with something very deep and interesting, but I'm not like that, to be honest. I just start and find some nice sounds, and it does reflect my mood, but I can't really grasp what motivates me for it. I have some tracks that are a bit like that. I have a record that just got announced yesterday on Fetus Records, and there I was obviously very super angry. But most of the time it's not like that, and I'm pretty chill. I'm just enjoy making music and doing stuff.
Sometimes that's more than enough. Sometimes making music is all about getting it all out. So I think maybe this is that example of just getting it out. Cool. Yeah. So tell us about it. How did you make it?
I'm gonna see what also here. not completely the same like the first track. Here I added, I think you hear some background noise. I think it's coming from a compressor, but I think there might be more somewhere. I don't know where it is, but now it's a bit less. Here I started to make the drums completely on the digitact, and I was just jamming. I just take all the sounds, start recording, and play around with my modular until I have a nice loop. And here I also use the red square, which is by Phobos. It's a really weird semi-modular synth, really hard to tame. Sometimes it's my friend, sometimes it's not. Here it kind of was. And yeah, then I started just recording the sounds one by one. You can connect the digitact straight with USB into your computer, but I like to go through the compressor that I have or through my mixer, because it just adds some more harmonics, sounds a bit warmer, a bit nicer. So I spend a lot of time doing that, just recording, and like you see here, I record and then I cut the parts that I want and just arrange it like that. Yeah, to come back to the question a bit earlier, here I have some returns. As you see, it's this project, I'm a bit more evolved in my way of working. So I have the Supermassive, as always. Before that, I added an EQ. I dipped it at between 2 and 200, 400, 500. That's a very muddy area. A lot of sounds, they overlap there. So for some things, I just like to take it away. So there's space, for example, for a synth or other things in that range. And there I have the Supermassive. Not too crazy. I added a compressor. Yeah, this one is very transparent, very light, but I wanted it mostly to have it for the sidechain. So the reverb gets sidechained all through. Then I have the H delay. That's actually from the same series as the compressor is. And this one, you can just have a basic delay, nothing crazy, but here you can also add super weird effects because it's based on an analog delay, like a space echo type of thing. I'm gonna show you later somewhere in the track. You have very weird like break with all the sounds going and morphing around and turning. That's what that thing does. Then I have a reverb. I cut a little bit, just the bottom end. Then this is the FEP filter reverb, which also has an EQ in there, actually. And put an EQ after it again. I don't know why the fuck I did that, actually. And Supermassive, as always, to add just even a bit more. It's a wave delay, which actually also gives some very creative sound. So you can use a delay and a reverb just how it's meant to be, but you can also use it in a way to make things a bit more crazier. Then I have, this is also one of my favorites. It's called Gorgon. It's also a free plugin. I don't know. I think I got it from a friend that is also here. I don't know what the manufacturer is, but if you look for Gorgon VST, you're gonna find it. It's a distortion which has very ugly sounds, but also very good just overdrive. A little bit of distortion. I use that for the kick, for bass. I use that on a lot of things actually. Okay. So these are the returns. If you start off with the drums, yeah, what I do with the drums, I put a compressor on that. Here's the CLA from Waves, and a H delay again on the drums itself. Yeah, an EQ to cut the bottom and the top. Not too interesting. The kick, it's a bit similar. For the snare, I did some automation. So you have the reverb there, which is a bit more dynamic. Sometimes it's a bit louder, like here. So you can listen to it. Oh, there's also a fat delay on it, as you can hear. It's not a typical snare. I took it from a noise engineering module called BIA. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the toms I think is the same. What I do with that is in my modular I run it through an amp, a VCA, also with a tube in there, and it adds some distortion too, and some warmth. And I have the supermassive going over it. That's why you have the delayed reverb sound to it. Yeah, all the drums are kind of the same processing. For this head, now I find it a bit boring. If I look at it now, I would actually add like an auto pan to make it move a bit more, like this. I don't know why I did it there, because I did it all the time. Too late now. Yeah, the drums, there's not so much going on. Most of the time it's just EQing, adding a bit of reverb, bit of delay. Then I have the red square here, which is the semi-modular synth. Here I added a bunch of things actually. EQ, always to start off with. The OTT, which is actually standard for Ableton. Add some harmonics, as you can hear, just slightly on the top. This is off. This is on, quite a difference. Compressor. Then I use the effect rack from Soundtoys. Here I have used the Devil Lock for saturation. And then when a saturation always adds harmonics. So if you EQ it before and the signal comes in, and it adds more signal too. So then I put an EQ after it again to get rid of the things that the saturator has added, because it adds some more low end, and also in the high. But sometimes I don't want a part of the low end of the high, then I can just decide. Here I did the trick with the LFO again to make it move. So this really trippy sound of the sound going back and forth, like this delay, that comes from the delay that I have on the return. If I turn it off, it sounds super dry. You can listen to it. It's actually just this. This is width. Did the same on this part, and this is actually the Juno 106 that I got from Roland Cloud. So I used the VST, then re-recorded it in another track through a compressor, and yeah, that's how it ends up like this. And same for the pads that show up a bit later. So for this, I made it a bit wider to pan it like to the left and right, just slightly, and added the supermassive again, some distortion from the Gorgon, and that's about it. Oh no, I forgot the vocals. Any questions? No? So I just recorded my vocals and chopped them up here and there. Full thing. Let me see, it's here. Personal reality. So I had a bunch of layers, and yeah, I EQ'd it. Then I used the de-esser to get rid of the harsh sounds, the S's, stuff like that. Then I used a manipulator, which is by Infected Mushrooms. Very funny. It's good to use on vocals. It morphs it a bit in some weird, like spooky effects. And I added effect rack with to give it a bit more crunch. and on the all the I layered. Yeah, I did like 1, 2, 3, 5 different layers of vocals, and also panning and using different effects on different tracks to make it, yeah, to have a bit more depth. The last office of humanity. So that's one. Then the one under there. The last office of humanity. And then one more. Personal reality. So if you put all that together, you get like some crazy sounding stuff. The last office of humanity. Personal reality. The last. So yeah, that's it, I think.
Dope. Sounds in depth. I got a few questions myself. I wrote it down, of course, because I didn't want to interrupt you. But it seemed that you had a tuner on one of the channels. Do you tune everything to, let's say, the kick or the bass or a melody?
I think the tuner is, I don't know where it was, but most of the time I use it for the modular stuff because that stuff is out of tune the whole time. A while ago I used to not care if it was in or out of tune as long as it sounded nice, but I have a project with Mila V and she does the vocals, and I made a pretty nice beat and it all sounded good. We were both super happy, but it was very hard for her to sing in tune. And I thought it was her fault, but it was actually me that made the track slightly out of tune. So I started to pay a bit more attention to it, yeah.
But do you then also have any musical experience in knowing what is out of tune and what is in tune? Or is it just by feel?
It's most of the time by feel. If I really, really pay attention, I kind of know. But if it's like slightly off, then not too much. And then if I start off with an idea and it's just, which is already out of tune, and I keep building, then I don't really hear it anymore because it still fits. Yeah.
But then how did you know what the tune is of this particular track?
I think because I put a tuner when I had the red square semi-modular, but the Juno, you have the keys, so I just see it from the keys. Yeah.
Cool. I think that were my questions. Are there any questions from the audience? I see one up there.
Hello? Yeah. During the last track, you mentioned that all club speakers are mono. I was wondering if you started to mix your tracks differently after realizing that, or do you just ignore that fact?
I always have a difficult time with it because I also want it to sound good, you know, when you listen to it at home or some other way. I do pay a bit of attention to that. Like normally I could, you know, I can pen like not until like half. I do like a quarter of penning, and sometimes I would like to go a bit further, and then I don't do it. So yeah, I think yes.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public? No? Okay. Let's continue. Thank you again for showing us how you made this track and the little intricate parts. Appreciate it.
Yeah, very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. We're not done still. Because if I believe correctly, you had something other planned for us.
Yeah, I thought it might be nice to show how I would start off making a new track. And yeah, just gonna show you how it is. And what I have now, it's the template that I talked about earlier. Like in the first track, that's where I record all my external gear. In this case, it's the Digitact. In the second, I have the SH2, which is the Roland Cloud plugin, which I like a lot. Very nice bass. and the Juno 106 is on here. And then I have all the returns that I showed earlier, but here I have in the effect rack I added the decapitator of sound toys, because I like this one at this moment a lot. And yeah, just gonna start build something and see where we will end. um, Okay. So yeah, that's basically how I start. Start playing around, look for a good groove. Here I already found the sounds before I started. I sometimes take a bit more time finding which sounds I'd like to use, but these are one of the main ones that I like, and this the favorite kick that I talked about, and all being run through the Erica Synths Fusion box. Yeah. Any questions? Easy. Oh shit, no.
It's not a question, but I think it's a super potential dope jam. I think you should finish it. Yeah,
It's not melodic enough, I think.
What? Yeah, it was good. I liked it. It was badass, and yeah,
thank you.
Like some tension. I like tension in music. Some drama. Some.
I like drama
we
too.
spoke a lot about music. What I like. So anyway, keep it up. And I also
you.
like the previous track. I didn't heard it before. Really, really dope. Also, what you did with your vocals, like cutting it, and yeah.
Thanks.
Why are you never sending me these?
I sent it,
tracks?
but it was without the vocals, and you were not interested, to be honest, because you did hear it.
And after all, then you added vocals, and then you gave it away to another label. Okay, all good.
You snooze, you lose. Some questions in the back, right?
Okay, yeah.
Forgot my question, but
That's okay.
yeah, you were talking about send and returns. Thanks for showing it. But I had a question about it because you used also distortion on the send and return. I never used distortion on the send and return channel. Do you use it because it makes it sound more like a whole, or just because of the ease of having it at hand quickly?
I think both. It's easy, and also having too many types of distortion can makes it super messy. Can also make it super nice, you know. Like there's no restrictions to that. But if I want to add a different, I just have my favorite, so then it's easy. And sometimes I like to add more if I can, and then I do it on the separate tracks as well. And also I can add a reverb over a reverb in my tracks too. Like, yeah.
Thanks, and I agree. Super sick track.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the audience? No?
When is the new EP dropping?
When is the new EP dropping? Good question. You stole my question, by the way.
21st of November, and the previous track that we listened to, Personal Reality, I think that's a compilation, and it's coming out on the 26th of November or 27th, I'm not sure.
Dope. I got a question myself. What do you need, or how do you get in the flow of making music? Do you mostly do that at nighttime, or do you need a drink, or how do you get in the flow and get your creative juices flowing?
Yeah, I'm quite easy with that. I'm always motivated. Can do it every day. Can do it a lot of hours per day. I don't drink when I'm producing, which if people they know me, it's really hard to believe. But I don't drink when I'm working, and yeah, during the day I like to do it as well. I think I'm most at my best between 4 in the afternoon until 10, 11 at night. I try to stop working around 11 because if I go home and I try to sleep, then I cannot sleep. I just hear the loop and I come up with ideas and stuff like that. Yeah.
Dope. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for coming out. Thank you for sharing with us your creativity, your workflow, everything about making music.
My pleasure.
Thank you. I believe that's a wrap then. This was Footprints by Operator Radio, sorry? Yes, of course, I forgot. Mayo made a sample pack for us that's going to release in a short while with the live stream of the event. So keep an eye on that one. She made a sample pack of I believe the 2 tracks that you share with us today.
Kind of, not really. I took a couple of sounds. I took a couple of sounds from the tracks that I showed you guys, but I also took from all different projects that I found. Also some unreleased stuff.
Basically, all your secret weapons you're sharing with the rest of us normal folks.
Yeah,
Thank
I don't
you.
have to do anything anymore after this. You guys can use my samples, and I'm just gonna sleep.
You're gonna live off the royalties. Live off the royalties. Thank you. Yeah, so this was Operator Radio Footprints. Go check us, share, subscribe. You know how it works.
Back in November.
And we're back in November with another edition of Footprints. Till then.